Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this week's Cafecito. My name is Valerie Zolezzi-Wyndham, and I'm a United Latinas board member. And it is a pleasure to be here with Jackie Gerena, who I had the pleasure to spend some time with a few months ago at the conference in Boston. It is so nice to be here with you, Jackie. Welcome.
Thank you, Valerie. So privileged to be here with you and to talk to the United Latinas community, right? I'm a member. I went to the conference, like you said, in Boston. It was phenomenal, unique, curated for us, out of this world. And just a little bit about me. I am one of the authors on the Extraordinary Latinas book, right? Volume 4. So go and get it. And also my daytime, I'm a thought leader in pharmaceutical risk management. And pretty soon I will be starting a coaching business. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie, for that introduction. I'm so excited to hear about that new business, and also to be reminded that you're in volume 4. I was in volume 1, and we encourage all of our readers to get the books. There's such beautiful stories in there.
Absolutely.
So today we are going to talk about from representation to impact, the change makers call to serve. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then we'll, of course, also invite engagement from the audience. As I was reflecting on the title, From Representation to Impact, and thinking about you, I'd love to hear, like, what does being a change maker mean to you, and how has your identity as a Latina in pharma shaped that role? And maybe also your journey to pharma shaped that role.
Yeah. So being a change maker, folks think that it's these grand gestures, or you have to have all these different accolades and these different, award certificates to be a change maker. No, me and you, all of us can be change makers. And it's essentially, the way I look at it is using your lived experiences to create pathways for others, right? Someone is exactly where you were yesterday, last week, last year, and hearing your story or seeing and you being open about it is being a change maker. You're changing the trajectory of yourself and in turn changing the trajectory for someone else. And as a proud Latina, very Puerto Rican, right? Although I was born and raised here, us Latinas, we're very proud of our heritage. The change maker is important because I not only carry my own ambitions, right? Because we have to be ambitious and have goals, but it's the legacy, right? The legacy of resilience of our people, right? Our community, the perseverance from those who came before us, right? And my identity as a Latina, it really grounds me. It reminds me that I'm not just here to succeed. I'm here to shift systems and open doors for those that are going to come after me, especially as a girl mom. That's huge.
Thank you. And I love what you're saying, because I think sometimes we can get stuck in a pattern of wanting to create change for ourselves, and really focusing on that, and maybe even being a little worried that there's only space and time for us to think about our own success. And so I love that you are very specifically calling out the importance of remembering that we can do that for ourselves, and we need to do it for the people who are following.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about, I want to ask a follow-up question before I get to our second question. When you think about your Puerto Rican identity specifically, and maybe the fact that you were born here, but bring that heritage, right? Because each of us have a different Latina journey. Is there anything specific about your story that has carved your path as a change maker in a way that might be different from others?
Absolutely. So, I consider myself first generation born here, right? Because my parents came from the island young and coming from very humble beginnings. They're country folk, right? My mother is illiterate, Spanish and English, but she is the smartest person I know. And she said education is key, right? And my father went to the 8th grade, and he dropped out in Puerto Rico because he was tired of people making fun of him for having broken shoes. But he was number 9 of 10 and the only boy. So yes, my grandma, to him, he was the next best thing since sliced bread. But coming from those humble beginnings and them coming here in seek of that American dream and that better life, they instilled in us that education is key. They told us, listen, we're not rich. We can't leave you inheritance. We're going to help you be better than what we were. So that sense of responsibility, right? And perseverance and having to do better, having to, be the change for the family and help springboard that generational change for our family and our people is important. So although it's different, with me being here, it's still the same roots of that better life for our family and the generations that come after us in remembrance of the sacrifices of the ones before us.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's so important. And I love that you're highlighting. I think sometimes we talk about what our parents did for us and the sacrifice, and we don't highlight their own brilliance, right? Like whether they had an education or not, that doesn't mean that they're not smart, right? That doesn't mean they lack intelligence. It just means they didn't have the opportunity to go to school because they were making investments in you, right? And in your future. So thank you for speaking to that specifically. I think we need to honor our parents' minds, right? And not only their hearts.
Yep, we get it from them, right? We're not just intelligent on our own, that DNA. So it's in there.
That's absolutely right. So I'd love for you to share a moment when your presence or your leadership made somebody else feel seen or inspired to act. And I'm going to ask this specifically in a work context.
Yep. So in a work context, I was speaking at a World Drug Safety Congress. This was about 2 years ago. And speaking on clinical trial diversity and risk management, all that fun stuff. And it's very, drug safety is not super fun, but I try to make it as cool as possible. And then at the end of that conference day, a young lady came up to me, a young woman of color, African descent, and came up to me and said, I've seen you speak in other events and I sat in your session on purpose. She goes, thank you. She said, thank you for making a difference. Thank you for showing us women on stage, because it's usually men, and us women of color, and being as brilliant as the other panelists, but not having to give up your authenticity. And then I tried it, I have it in my other office, so I don't have it here. Then she went into her tote bag and gave me a gift. She gave me one of those clear plaques that says, the positive quote of don't ever forget the impact you make on others' lives by like just being you. And so I teared up, and then she teared up, and then she told me a personal story on how her leadership, and she's in pharma as well, did not want to sponsor her attendance in this industry specific conference, but she felt it was important for that next step she wants to take in her career to be there. And she invested in herself, and she took her vacation time, took her money to be there. And she said, and seeing you on stage made it worthwhile. And she gave me this gift, and I still have it. And it just, I'm like, wow, I do what I do because it's important. And I want us to not just fill the room and check the box, but to make impact. But to have someone come to me and say that and then hand me a gift. And it overwhelmed me, where I'm like, this is why.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it is why. And shame on her, shame on her bosses who don't see her potential, or who just don't imagine it's a place for her.
You know
And
what's funny? Her boss and her non of color colleagues, right? Her Caucasian colleagues and her boss were there on the company dime, and they were shocked to see her, and she took her own time and her own money. So
yeah.
good for her. Invest in
Yeah,
ourselves.
oh, that's right. And maybe good for them seeing her engage with you, right? I think, but you're right. I think something that when we are frustrated, maybe with our own journey or where we are and the challenges that we're having, I think reminding ourselves that there are people watching and learning from us, and that we are modeling behaviors, and even like maybe even the behavior of managing the challenge in a way that other people are seeing, and that there's value in that, right? So so important to share our stories, and maybe not only for women like her, but also for people like her colleagues to hear the stories and to open their minds, to why it would have been important for them to pay her way, right?
Yep, exactly.
And I think pharma safety is actually really exciting. I mean, it may be
Yay!
technical, but it's really important.
It is important. And there's
Really
people,
important.
and I always say there's folks on my end where it's not about a sale, it's about the safety, it's about the patient, it's about the making sure that patients have access and safe use and experiences with these life-saving and life-transforming drugs. So there's a whole bunch of us that don't care about the dollars. We care about the safety and the impact of the medicine. So,
Right.
and we go to bat for all the patients. So
That's awesome. I love it. And my husband is a scientist, so I'm also particularly passionate about that
mhm.
work. It is really, really important. So let me get to our next question. Actually, I'm going to ask a follow-up before I get to our next question. I asked you to answer that question speaking specifically to a moment where your leadership or presence made a difference out in your workspace. And I'd love to hear whether there's maybe a different kind of example where you've seen your leadership have that impact on a personal level. And it could be like with your daughter, because you said you have a daughter, but it could also be, in community.
Yeah, there's many examples, but to hone in one, in community, it's I take the time to invest in myself and go through the WOSIP speakers bureaus. I've done it twice. And the last, I did one during COVID where, you know, I became a certified speaker on COVID-19. And that's not work related. It's a personal journey. And I had curated slides with real information, not the myths all over the social media, to then be able to engage in the community and say, listen, I am in pharma. I look like you. And it's their We Are Pharma initiative to say, let me educate you or let me relate to you. And because I am pharma and I can explain to you, it's not someone's conspiracy theory. And I was able to give that virtually to, a youth program out in Philly and my local community and my churches here where people felt comfortable. And it wasn't to sway folks in one way or the other with the vaccine. It was to give education in a level where folks can understand it in a comfortable, safe environment with someone who they can personify with and feel comfortable asking questions to then make their own personal informed decision on what is best for them. And that was so powerful. And people were like, oh my gosh. And then you know how our community is. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a clinician, but I work in pharmacy. So they all assume I'm a doctor. And I'm like, I'm not a doctor. But I have curated slides and I have education and let's run through it. Let's do it. I even did it with my family. Um, and I'm proud to say that I recently did another speakers bureau on obesity, and I'm looking for a place to come and give that discussion because obesity affects our community at higher proportions than others, and it is a disease, right? It's just that when you wear your symptoms on the outside. So it's that sense of community. They look at us as leaders because we're in these roles, and it's like, what are we doing to actually help them give back? Because they don't understand the technical, but we have to bring it down to be able to empower our people to make informed decisions and not just go by what someone said on Facebook or what their doctor said in a 2-minute appointment.
Yes, no, that's right. I do some work in the healthcare space, and diabetes, right? Hypertension in our community is very high. And I think it's very important for us to be involved in helping to educate our community, because the treatment and the care has to be culturally specific, right?
It
If you are trying to
does.
help somebody with diabetes and you're offering them that advice and it's not done in a way that speaks to them and speaks to how they eat and to their customs, it's not going to be successful.
No,
And
it has
so
to
I
be
think that,
culturally relevant.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and my mother, when she got diagnosed with diabetes, ¿cómo que diabetes? She was like, I'm not fat and I don't eat chocolates. And it was like, whoa, that's not what it's about, Mom.
I see.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. So we've talked a lot about your impact and how you have created your change maker journey. And I look forward to hearing, more as the months come about the work that you're going to be doing. I'd love to have you share with our audience how you suggest that other Latinas and other women can transform their own experiences into impact, no matter where they are in their careers.
Yeah, so it's important that you transform your experiences into impact, right? Like I said earlier, being in the room is no longer good enough, right?
Mm,
Like being in the room, no, we need to be in the room and we need to action and we need to activate ourselves. And I always joke that, folks always say, well, I want a seat at the table, or sometimes I don't even wait to get a seat at the table. I'm like, oh, the room's open. There's no seats. Well, I'm a soccer mom. I have one in a chair in the trunk. I'll be right back. And I bring my own chair, right? And it's sort of start where you are, your story, your journey. It's a blueprint for someone else. Like I said earlier, right? Share it, own it, whether it's just mentoring a student or leading a project at work, or in your community, or showing up confidently in a meeting. That makes a difference, right? I show up with my big hoops, and today I got my hair in a ponytail, but my big curls, my hoops, and my go-to is usually like a bright blazer, and I own my authenticity. Show up confidently. It makes a difference and it makes an impact. So it changes you from just being there to, wow, that's Jackie. Look at Jackie. She's there, right? And it's also you're what you're doing is you're creating a ripple effect when you do that, right? It's the being visible, not just being there, but being visible, being noticed. Folks will pay attention. And then once they're paying attention, they can see the fabulousness that is your output and is your work. But if you sit in a little corner shy, it's not gonna happen. You're just gonna be, the little Latina who sits in the corner. It's like, come in and, don't be obnoxious, because I know I can be a little bit much, but be enough where you establish good rapport with people, you follow up, right? And you don't have to be in a leadership role now. You don't have to be in a certain level to be able to make that impact, right? I always say that I love to share that in my pharma career, I started as an administrative assistant 15 years ago, right? And although I was an administrative assistant, I made my impact at that level and I raised my hand for other projects. And because I had made myself visible, not just occupy space, folks gave me opportunities for stretch assignments. And then here I am 15 years later at a leading pharma company overseeing safety programs across therapeutic areas, not being a clinician or a scientist, right? So the impact doesn't have anything to do with title. It's starts with intention, and be intentional where you are today.
So I mean, I love the advice that you're giving in part because when we think about leadership or our leadership development, I think we can it's 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 easy to think that we have to do these really big things. And I love that you talked about like wherever you're sitting, what is one thing that you can do, right? To ask for an assignment or maybe to offer advice about something specific, that maybe makes it feel more accessible to folks who are earlier in their journey. And it's little things that you can do every single day, regardless of what role you're in, right? Regardless of who it is that you're interacting with. I think the idea is if you see an opportunity to add value, add that value, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't even have to be in corporate America. It could be in your community, right? A volunteer position. It could be at your church. It could be, at your senior center, right? So it's just leadership is in everywhere. It's not just in a workplace or your 9 to 5. Leadership is a state of mind, is a way of being, and being a leader in every aspect of your life.
So the first time we do that, the first time somebody goes to take that bold step, wherever it is that it's happening, it could be scary. And you talk about the importance of showing confidence. And we also have talked a little bit in the conversation about authenticity. So if you're not feeling really confident, but you have that idea and you think you can contribute some value, what is your advice for how somebody models the confidence even when they're not feeling it inside? Any advice?
Yeah, I may come across as super confident all the time. I'm a little bit nervous right now because I know this is being recorded, but you can't tell, right? Um, I think the first thing, or at least what worked for me, is knowing my audience, right? Educate yourself. Who's going to be in that meeting? Who's going to be in that room? What are their titles? What do they do? Do you know someone who knows them that can give you some heads up of, are they open to feedback if it's unsolicited, or do they like hallway conversation, or do they have an open door policy where they allow you to come and chat with them? Do they prefer emails, right? So educating yourself on your audience, who's going to be in the room, what the topic at hand is, that is like studying for a test, right? You know, you're going to have a big test, a math test, a chemistry test. Brushing up on your formulas, your skill sets, it's exactly what you're going to do when you're going to talk to folks, because everyone has their I lost the word, but they have their preferred communication style and
Mhm.
method of engagement. So if you can figure that out, that'd be top notch. But if not, listen, maybe the first time you sit back and observe. I'm very, I can read people very well, read the room, observe, see how other folks engage and how that's going on, to accumulate all that knowledge to then equip yourself for that next time when you're like, listen, I know what they're talking about. I did my homework. I know that Valerie doesn't mind people to speak up. I just raise my hand, or if there's a pause, she's okay. Or when she says, does anybody have a thought? Then that's my opportunity, because she does that often, right? She doesn't like to create groupthink. So it's sort of reading and understanding and knowing your audience, and knowing your stuff, and knowing and making sure that your contribution is meaningful. You don't just speak to speak and be heard. That's another thing, right? Sometimes people
Right.
speak and I'm like, well, you spoke a lot, but you didn't say anything,
Yeah.
right? So yeah. So that's just my initial sort of thoughts and suggestions for folks.
No, that's great. So, I mean, planning, right? Anytime you're going to do anything, make a plan. And what I'll add to that is that you also can practice. And so, maybe it's the first time that you're going to step in and, raise your hand and say something in the meeting. Like, you can practice doing that ahead of time. And you can practice in front of a mirror. You can practice with a friend,
Hmm.
and you could get some feedback about how to do it well. I also think another thing that we can be doing along the way in our journeys is to be observing, right? Who do I see stepping into a meeting or saying the thing that feels good to me? And also, like, who do I see doing it, like you just said earlier, right? Who says a lot but doesn't say anything? And I think we want to both listen for what we like and what we don't like, so that when we can plan to do it well and to do it in a way that's going to work for us, right? Because I might see, my husband do something well, and that style, even though it's a good way, it might not work for me. And so I love the combination of what you're talking about in really observing, seeing what works for who your stakeholders are, and then thinking about, how do you do it authentically?
Absolutely. Yep.
So, in wrapping up, I'd love for you to tell us, one thing that you're working on, and then how we can find you. So if somebody wanted to learn more about, working in pharma and safety, or wanted to learn about just how to connect with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn, Jacqueline Gerena, because Jacqueline, right? Jacqueline. It's my formal government name, like my daughter says, and I use it when it's something formal or if I'm in trouble. So other than that, it's Jackie. But find me there, and listen, when you message me and say, I saw you in the United Latina Cafecito. And then I'll be like, oh my God. And I'll reach out and I'll know that it's not spam, because we're getting a lot of that now.
Yep.
And something that I'm working on is a passion of mine, of, because I have a different experience of other folks in corporate and in life, and being perseverant and resilience, and transforming from a survivor to, like, a powerhouse. I'm looking into doing some coaching, and I'm working on starting up a business there because I do it anyways on a regular, and I'm always more than happy to mentor folks and coach and give career advice. And I have a meeting later today on that, and I'm like, how can I do this more broadly and help more people than those in my personal small network? And it's like, well, let's create something where I can market myself, put people out there, and just give back. That's my biggest thing, is I want to give back. I want to leave the world in a better place than what it was when I came here, right? And that's a passion of mine. And it may get annoying, like my 22-year-old says, "Mom, the cashier at Walmart really didn't want you to talk to her about college." I go, "Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did. And she took my phone number. She's going to message me," right? So this is just what I do on a regular. And
Mhm.
I want to be able to do it at a broader scale to make bigger impact. And so that'll be coming up pretty soon.
I love it. I love it. And I also love that you mentioned the feedback from your kid, right? I think sometimes they might be right when they give us feedback, and other times they're sharing sort of maybe their stress about the way that we have gotten comfortable being who we are, right? And offering all that guidance. But
Yeah.
it is what United Latinas is all about, right? We are committed to giving voice to amazing women like you, Jackie, right? By having you on. We're committed to encouraging Latinas to share their superpowers with the community so that other people can grow. And because then we all get stronger. And so I appreciate your time. I appreciate all of the wisdom that you've shared, and also the learning that you've had, that you've shared with us, because I think it's important that we share with folks all of it, right? The struggles and the successes. So thank you so much
Mhm.
for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about your work and your passions and how we can be change makers. I follow you on LinkedIn, and I know we've been in the DMs over there. And I encourage anyone who's listening or who listens afterwards to take Jackie's advice. Say, hey, I heard you at Unite Latinas. That context matters. So please reach out. And Jackie, we wish you so much luck with your work in pharma and your new coaching work. And I personally look forward to seeing you at a Unite Latinas event in the flesh sometime soon.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you for having me. And yes, reach out on LinkedIn. I won't ignore you.
I love it. Bye, everyone.